And next up is Lynne Barre from NOAA with the Orca Recovery Plan from NOAA. And that's working? Yeah.
Hi, I'm Lynne Barre. Thanks again for inviting all of us here to participate in this panel. I think it's a great opportunity for us to make some of the connections Jeanette just mentioned between people who are interested in orca recovery and also salmon recovery, because we do have these common interests. And so just to start with a big picture for killer whale recovery, our endangered southern resident killer whales, we do have a recovery plan similar to the salmon recovery plans. It's a roadmap, it's a guide that has actions about how do we get to recovery. And Brad mentioned that that recovery plan addresses all of the threats, prey, as well as contaminants, which we heard a little bit about this morning from Howie, vessels, which we heard a little bit about in Florian's great video, and also addressing threats that probably didn't help cause that decline we saw in the 90s, but also remain as a threat out there, things like oil spills. So the recovery plan addresses all of those things. And just to focus, since we're focused today on the salmon part of that, our recovery plan first and foremost guides support of salmon recovery as a key element to recover the southern resident killer whales. It touches on the habitat actions, harvest management, hatchery management, all of those different H's that we heard about. And the killer whale recovery plan really opens a window into this larger infrastructure that stretches from California to Alaska, and really is community-based in many ways, and really ties into that local energy and ingenuity in developing ways to recover salmon and their habitats. So one other tool that we haven't talked, well, you talked a little bit about it under the Endangered Species Act, is something called Section 7 of the Endangered Species Act. That guided the biological opinion for the federal Columbia River power system. It also guides a number of other evaluations of the impacts of federal actions on our endangered species. Anything that's funded or permitted or carried out by a federal agency. We have to look at how that affects endangered species. And so in looking at the numerous salmon consultations under Section 7 that are going on, following the listing of southern resident killer whales as endangered, we've engaged in that process. We've made that link through the Endangered Species Act from the killer whales to their salmon prey that are also listed under the ESA. So things like the federal Columbia River power system, that biological opinion also addresses how killer whales are affected by the changes in salmon. Other projects range in national flood insurance plans that address salmon habitat in upland areas, water rights issues in California on some of the rivers there. More and more we're making that link through our Endangered Species Act tools of how things that impact salmon also impact the whales. And so we've got the impacts, we've got the linkage and recovery, and so I think that's been guiding a lot of our process in filling data gaps to inform management. Everything that some of the stuff Brad presented today, that's right hot off the presses, and will work into our process. And one of the things that we focused on through the Killer Whale Recovery Program, addressing salmon in the last couple of years, is to look at some of these actions that affect the abundance of salmon in the whale's habitat, and with a little bit of a focus on fisheries to start. But fisheries, we know, are not the only things that affect that abundance of salmon. So we've taken the scientific information, a lot of what you saw Ken present about the numbers of salmon that are out there, a lot of information about the numbers of whales, how many are disappearing, how many are reproducing, and we're finding those great linkages, those relationships, and supporting that with science. And one of the things that are a big transboundary effort with our colleagues at the Department of Fisheries Oceans Canada over the last couple of years, we put a scientific panel together to review all of that scientific information and help us evaluate what are those strongest linkages, what are our data gaps and uncertainties that we need to fill in order to move forward in a more informed decision-making way. And one of those take-home messages, it was a long couple-year process. It's a very detailed report. I encourage you guys to look into that if you want to know more information. But one of the take-home messages is there isn't really an easy answer. There isn't one run of salmon that is the answer for the whales. It's a broad ocean abundance of salmon that we need to support and increase and make sure that it's at a level that will support the whales we have today and the whales we want to have in the future for recovery. So I guess probably more than 5 minutes, but that's a little bit of an introduction and some of the work we've been focusing on recently for that link between orcas and salmon.
Thanks, Lynne. That was great.